I was talking to my father about the day 22 years ago where we were driving around and he was talking to me, who was newly interested in business, about the idea that places change. In the United States, North America was the place to be in the 20th century. They say if you want to be successful in 1800, you go to London. In 1900, you go to New York. In 2000, he's like, we're almost at 2000 at that point. He said, you ought to go where you're treated best. And he said, the things in the United States are changing. People aren't as self-sufficient. People want things handed to them more and more. And if you're a business owner, that's going to be against you. This great respect, people who create value and create wealth, has gone away. And he said, you should go where you're treated best.
Welcome to the Wealth Through Real Estate Investing podcast, your source for real-world strategies focused on creating long-term wealth, cash flow, and financial freedom through real estate. Through guidance, tips, and stories of highly successful real estate investors and thought leaders, we provide you the tools to succeed and reach the lifestyle you always wanted. And now your host, Dwaine Clarke.
Hello and welcome to the Wealth Through Real Estate Investing podcast. This is your host, Dwaine Clarke, and today we have Andrew Henderson. Andrew is a world traveler, investor, entrepreneur, and founder of Nomad Capitalist. He helps entrepreneurs create the nomad lifestyle by setting up foreign bank accounts, moving their businesses overseas, obtaining second passports, and investing in foreign markets. Andrew, how you doing? And thank you for joining us on the show.
It's great to be with you. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I really appreciate it as well. Like I said, I'm very intrigued by this topic. We, of course, work with a lot of investors in the U.S. And of course, you're out there and internationally, you're the international expert. So one of kind of the biggest things that I want to kind of dive into, but before we get started, if you don't mind, would you kind of share about your background and kind of your process for your company?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I just met up with my parents today. They came in from the U.S. And about the day 22 years ago where we were driving around and he was talking to me, who was newly interested in business, about the idea that places change. In the United States, North America was the place to be in the 20th century. They say if you want to be successful in 1800, you go to London. In 1900, you go to New York. In 2000, he's like, we're almost at 2000 at that point. He said, you ought to go where you're treated best. And he said, the things in the United States are changing. People aren't as self-sufficient. People want things handed to them more and more. And if you're a business owner, that's going to be against you. This great respect, people who create value and create wealth, has gone away. And he said, you should go where you're treated best. And so that's what I've lived by. I ran a number of businesses in the United States, in the broadcasting industry, in the financial services industry, in the home services business, sold all those. And moved overseas and continued kind of what's been a 12-year process of study of where are the best places to go, because the answer is no one place can be perfect. And so I started blogging about this about 7 years ago now. It's kind of what Tim Ferriss calls a mini retirement. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll become a media creature and I'll be the guy to talk about investing in Laos or something, and that'll be my thing. But it turned into now we've got 7, 8, 9, and even 10-figure people who are coming to us and they say, what can I do? Where do I get a passport? What's my tax plan? What's my strategy to go where I'm treated best? And so it's really become a big, beautiful thing based merely on, people coming and asking. So go where you're treated best is what we say.
How about for the people, like I said, we work with all investors here, majority of them that own U.S. real estate. They have a life here. They have their businesses here. For the general part, they love the culture. They love kind of living here. Is there a way for them to be able to kind of have the best of both, where you're in a different country, own investments there, own different stuff while kind of living here? Or do you kind of, your process, your strategy is kind of pick up and then kind of move it over to another country?
Well, so I wrote the book Nomad Capitalist, where I talked about you want to be able to cherry pick what you want. And so for me, I didn't really belong in the United States. I don't like the idea as a business owner. I know for real estate investors, you get some deals. As a business owner, paying 43%. If I were there today, I'd be paying closer to 50% on what I earn today. It's ridiculous. And so I chose to go all in. What I've said in my book and what I say to folks like yourself is you can pick out certain strategies. Now, I have a guy right now. He sold a business for $200 million, and he said, listen, like I'm older. I don't want to really leave the United States. Why would I give up my citizenship? I'd like the option. Let me go get that European Union passport. Let me go get a couple different passports. Let me get some bank accounts. Let me diversify. So I'm getting the best of all worlds. Maybe I'm investing in some emerging markets to give me exposure to a different kind of investment. I have money in other banks where I can, make other investments in things like stocks. My money is protected. Who knows what the U.S. does to the banking system in the future. So he's taking steps to diversify while still saying, I want to keep my brownstone in New York City. I want the right to come and go, and that's totally cool. Everyone has their own strategy. What you're not going to be able to do is say, I want to sit in the United States 365 days a year and pay zero tax on what I should otherwise be paying tax on by using offshore companies. There's a lot of pretty strict rules on how that works. And so there is something for everyone. It's just a matter of prioritizing. So absolutely, bank accounts, investments, passports, those are things you don't have to leave to have.
I know they kind of going with a consultant like yourself, but as far as kind of getting the juices running, like how do people kind of start the process to see what their criteria actually is? Because you mentioned a couple things of kind of dipping your toe in, but what's kind of the way to kind of first get the exposure? Because like for myself coming in, and many of our listeners are like, wow, this is really interesting. We want to get involved, but like, what's kind of like the first initial process?
Well, some really simple steps. I mean, it's the best man at my wedding said a couple of years ago. He gave a speech at one of our conferences with Jim Rickards, and he said, if you don't have a U.S. passport or whatever passport where you're from, like get that first and get out. When I call American Express, when my wife called Apple the other day about her computer not working, they said, oh, well, whenever you're back in the U.S., come in and fix it. My wife is Russian. She's been to the U.S., but we don't live in the U.S. She's not taking the computer back. We're not on a vacation away from the U.S. Apple, which is supposed to be this high-level company, they can only imagine that their products are sold in one country, right? Mm-hmm. And so my thing is, if you don't have a passport, get it. If you do have a passport, use it. And so the first thing that I would recommend from our world, once you're traveling and seeing how other places operate, seeing that you're not going to be killed because you leave the country, is go and open an offshore bank account. We've talked about, countries like Georgia, where I've done a lot of work, and, go to Georgia. You can open a bank account with $0. Okay. There's other countries like that. And so what I think that does is it starts to build up that momentum inside you where you put in $1,000 or $5,000 or whatever it is you're comfortable with. You dip that toe in. For this other guy, it might be $1 million. To him, that's dipping his toe in. But, get the debit card, use it. Go on the online banking, see how nice it is. Move money into other currencies. A month later, when your money is still there, you'll be like, oh, okay, interesting. And what I've said, and what I've told the people I've worked, with a lot of the ministers in Georgia, and I've said, that's the best strategy for you guys, because someone comes, they get a bank account, now it's on their radar. Maybe next time they come back, they start looking at property. And then they buy more and buy more and buy more. And we've had people get 13, 14% yields, like total cash deals, not leverage, but cash deals in Georgia, and good appreciation. So I think the bank account is a great first step once you're out into the world, because it requires so little of you.
Yeah, I like that process there. I want to kind of touch on the real estate, but you just kind of mentioned kind of just starting a bank account, getting a debit card. Here, sitting in the U.S., is there a process for me to just do it and kind of get that process, or literally have to go over to the country? And is it different barriers for different countries?
Well, the U.S. citizens do have some banks where they won't take you. I'm a former U.S. citizen, and there are certain banks like in Liechtenstein that they don't even want a former U.S. citizen. Like, we don't want anything to do with you people. There are banks in some of the traditional offshore centers that will allow you to open an account remotely. And there are a few that are perhaps decent. By and large, in the world we live in, where banks are de-risking, where transparency is a bigger and bigger thing, I think it's worth going there. And again, why do I say go there? You can open a bank account in, let's say, Belize remotely. Banks in Belize have had some problems. They've been on the list of these countries saying, like, we think, the U.S. goes down there, we think you're, hiding money for some people, and it's a big brouhaha and, a lot of problems. And so I don't really want you to be banking in those kind of banks. Plus, I just want you to get out there. For example, I've talked about Georgia. I go to Tbilisi for a week. I see so many people, they come up and said, are you Andrew? I'm here to open a bank account because I saw it on your video. And what do they find out? This place is pretty nice. this is interesting. The women are attractive. The food is delicious. The wine is amazing. It's $5. You have the most amazing wine. You have nice people. They start seeing things. So I think the whole package is what really helps people. What I focus on is the human side. The big four can put together a great tax plan. I have a lot of people who come to me who are kind of frustrated with them. But I look at it and saying, the human side is important. You've got to get comfortable with it or else you won't do it.
Exactly. Absolutely. What, as far as like your clients, from kind of people that have just several hundred thousands to the tens of millions, is there any kind of popular or attractive areas that are people moving their money and they're moving some businesses over to that you're seeing?
Well, I think it really is all situation dependent. Every situation is different. And as I said, some people, they already sold their business for, 50, 80, $200 million. We've had a lot of those people in the last year and a half. From what you're talking about in the real estate space, two places I've been very bullish on for a while, Cambodia, in Southeast Asia, hasn't had a recession practically since you or I have been alive. Great, uncorrelated market. Big fan of that. One of the four cheapest capital cities in the world that allows foreign ownership. Less than $1,000 a square meter. Just had a friend of mine buy a little apartment complex, 50 square meters or so from the Royal Palace. Paid less than $1,000 for a square meter. What I've really been working on recently is Colombia. The challenge in a market like Colombia is anything English speaking, you're going to get ripped off. There's a lot of these expats who go down there and sell to gringos, and it's really not a great deal. We've been really discovering some prices that are not that much higher than that, quite frankly, in places in Colombia. And so you've got markets that sound scary. I think there's a great arbitrage opportunity there, kind of arbitraging the sentiment. You've got a lot of investors from China coming to Cambodia. There are areas I wouldn't touch. I would be in the capital. In Colombia, I would also be in the capital. I wouldn't be buying out elsewhere. And I think people are doing incredible deals. I think you'll do very well in the long run. So those are places I recommend. Obviously, that has to match the person that I'm working with. And so if someone's goal is to get a passport, they might buy certain real estate in a country where, invest $250,000 in real estate, get a passport, or get permanent residence in 3 years from now, get a passport. And so I try and work on how those things work together. I'm not really an investment guy, but those are two markets that I'm really excited about, actually.
Very interesting. As far as kind of like the process, and you may or may not know the process of it, as far as getting debt to purchase stuff, is that common? And what's the process of doing that in these types of countries?
A lot of countries, it's not even common for locals. And if it is common for locals, I'll comment about Georgia. I've got a great friend who is a big real estate developer. They just offered, one of his associates is the deputy chief risk officer at a bank there. And so they have that kind of connection. And they were offering their new build or new construction buyers 9.9% fixed on a 10-year loan. So, the terms are not really what you're, if you want to get the kind of terms you're getting in the U.S., Malaysia, where I have a house, I think there is possibilities there. But really, the more developed a market, the more likely that is. Obviously, the country that you're a citizen of or a resident of is going to give you the best terms. If I, as a non-U.S. person now, want to come back and get a loan in the United States, I'm not going to get 96.5%, loan to value. So I think what you're looking at is a lot more cash deals. The further you go down, when you're buying property, again, Cambodia is 1/25th the price of Singapore. With that comes fewer facilities. If you want to buy Malaysia, which is half the price of Thailand, and even though the country is wealthier, you can probably get, 50, 60, 70%. You can be somewhat limited. And so leverage is less of a factor. But, what interests me is, my stuff in Cambodia, I think we did 17 or 18% total return in the last year with no leverage. And so I don't do leverage personally. I know a lot of real estate investors do. I think that if you're going to do that, you're not going to get into the rock, discount deals. Exactly. Yeah. Same way you probably wouldn't, in the United States. When I was looking at stuff in the United States, when something is it has to be a conforming loan. You can't buy a place that's a total dump that you got to fix up and get full financing.
So far as the kind of shifting over from real estate to entrepreneurs, I have a lot of entrepreneurs that are Amazon FBA sellers and stuff like that. I know that you had written a pretty lengthy article on that. And as far as kind of setting up, the corporation in different countries, can you kind of explain that whole process and what the benefits is? And is it an easy switch to say a person have it established here that they can kind of transition over to another country and get all the benefits that way?
Well, yeah, I mean, Amazon FBA has its own unique things that need to be addressed because you're using Amazon warehouses, which are not your warehouses, but yet you are selling within the United States. So there's some things that be addressed there. Pretty straightforward for us, but it's not just a matter of set up an offshore company and and run with it. Any kind of location independent business where you can be out of your country is a great thing for an offshore company. I do have people who come to me. Had a gentleman who has a business that does $10 million a year, and he's got a lot of workers physically doing things. He might be able to spend some time in the U.S. because the business is so international. We can still save a substantial amount in taxes. If you're owning an Amazon FBA business and there's 2 people working for you, or a Shopify, or any kind of location independent thing, you're probably going to need to be the one to move. But when you do that, you can set up an offshore corporate structure. You can, move the assets over. There's a certain way to do everything, but, on the face of it, it's relatively straightforward. There's a lot of mistakes I see people making, but once it's set up properly, you could ostensibly pay zero. You could pay very low amounts of tax. And so what I've seen with guys who are Amazon FBA or anything else that's stock intensive is they have a lot more money to put back into stock. Just had a guy sold an Amazon business, I think this year, for $6 or $7 million. When I met him, it was not even $1 million. And he really used that tax savings to beat all of his competitors who are still sitting in Australia.
Yeah, that's very interesting there. As far as like giving some examples of some of the clients that you work with, it's kind of like their kind of massive shift, maybe an example of them kind of packing everything up, moving over, and then kind of like the time length in that, because I have people that's probably interested in that, and then some people are dipping their toes. Would you mind giving us some examples of those?
Well, we have people who are in the cryptocurrency space, for example, where, if you're a U.S. person, there's not really, you can't get away from capital gains tax as a U.S. person. Because the U.S. is the one country that follows you no matter where you go. South Africa is starting to go in that direction pretty quickly. But, let's say that you buy a piece of real estate, in Georgia, in my earlier example, on Cambodia. If you sell that, you're going to pay whatever Georgia or Cambodia want, which is potentially zero. And then the U.S. is going to send you a bill for the difference. So the difference between whatever they charge and zero is the whole amount, basically. So what people are doing is, Andrew, I've got a large portfolio of location-independent assets or non-home country assets. We've helped people get second citizenships in as little as 4 or 5 months, and that's allowed them to expatriate. Because once they've given up their U.S. citizenship, they can say, if my crypto goes from 5 million to 50 million, that 45 million delta will be capital gains tax-free. I've got a guy right now who's looking at doing that. He's got a business worth about 10 million. I'm going to work with some assessors, and we're going to see if maybe his 10 million is a little rosy and we can get that down. He'll pay a little bit of tax, but then, he wants to build it to 50 million. And so again, he can save $40 to $43 million tax base. It's $10 million. That's a pretty aggressive step. I did it. I had a pretty good tax plan as a U.S. person living overseas. I just personally got fed up with this idea of, America first. I see that there are countries all over the world. They all have something to offer. The United States has something that's good to offer. I think the U.S. does a number of things well, but it just wasn't working for me. So I gave it up. And I think that's kind of the ultimate step that people do.
Yeah, it just really comes down, like you mentioned before, what your goal is. Some people want to shift up the whole thing over. Some people want to have a little bit of both. Your process was, everything you wanted to move over as to countries.
And also, I'm respectful of the fact. Again, had someone recently said, hey, Andrew, it's great. They're going to save probably $900,000 in tax this year, but they said, you know what, family stuff, we're going back. It kind of breaks my heart, but it's what they want to do. And I understand and I respect that. I'm not here to convince anyone of this. And so what I would probably say is, you're probably not going to jump into renouncing your citizenship. I've had a number of people do it. A number of people have already done it before they met me, come to me and figure out what's next. But I think that's why the dipping your toe in is important, because if you've had your toe dipped in and then you dip another and another and another, it's not going to feel as extreme as if one day you just wake up and you've got to do something like that.
Yeah, so for us, yeah, it's I love going to Europe. We go every year, at least 2 months out of the year. What do you think about the European Union and owning real estate there, in particular the Baltic states area?
I'm very frustrated with the European Union in general. I think there are pockets of opportunity. The Baltics being Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, I think are interesting. I think Estonia has done a nice job. Understand that everything in Europe, namely the European Union, is going to be more bureaucratic. People from the United States come to me and say, "Hey, Andrew, I read something online about moving to Portugal. They've got a tax regime that's pretty favorable." Yeah, it's a pain in the butt. The lawyers, bloviate, and I mean, we can get it done, but it's going to cost you more. It's going to cost you more to move to Portugal than it is to move to Malaysia. And so I think that there's this kind of like, why would it cost so much? Because everything in Europe is red tape and slow. And, I mean, I was talking to, I don't know, someone recently where they said, I get a salary of 4,000 euros from my company. I keep about 2,400 euros, and the company has to pay 6,200 euros. The amount the company pays, barely 1/3 of it trickles down to the actual in your pocket pay. The rest is going to healthcare. The rest is going to all kinds of nonsense. And obviously, as a great investor, if you had that money to invest for the next 30 years, I'm sure you could do better than whatever Belgium's doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not quite as bad as in Estonia and in that area, but I mean, I don't see any amazing deals in the European Union. Certainly, if you pick a place and you go there, you can get in, you can do your deals. But I do see it's different in Europe compared to the U.S. is much less flipping. So if you're a flipper, you're going to have a harder time doing that under the tax regime. So I have Lithuanian ancestry. I like prospects in that part of the world, but I think that Europe is a challenging place for a lot of people.
Where do people kind of start their research? You mentioned, Cambodia, getting good returns, some other different places, but where's some trusted places? I know, talking to you, of course, that people can go to kind of, just build that knowledge base before they feel comfortable, and then take a trip down there and kind of touch it, and then get the process started.
I mean, here's the thing. When I started this 12 years ago, I don't think there was anyone. There was, retired to an island people, and there still are. There's what my friend and I call the spy novelists, where, they just kind of write about how they're going to Tajikistan and doing this and that, which is not what someone's really going to do. It's funny. I think I heard that one of those guys had some problems with one of their investments recently, like the investment didn't exist. So, I wrote a book on this. I think it's a good place to start to get in it. For me, here's what I do that I think people underestimate. I've logged 12 years, plenty of button seat miles. I've now got a research team of, as of today, 4 people full time. This is all we do. And I'm working with them, and I'm traveling, and I'm going to places. I've slowed down a lot, but I'm going to Mexico and Colombia and Chile and Georgia and Armenia. I got like 7 more countries in the next few months. I think that's what it is. It's just time on the ground. And after 12 years of doing it, after training my staff on how to do it, we've kind of learned how to separate the wheat from the chaff. So you can either hire someone to do it for you, or you can go and do it yourself. What I wouldn't do is just go and hire the gringo people who sell you real estate, on some flashy website. Whether it's Colombia, Cambodia, or anywhere else, you're probably going to pay 20 to 50% more just because the website's in English. So that's not the answer. And so it really requires feet on the ground, whether you outsource that or whether it's you.
So your book, Nomad Capitalist, is out on Amazon and different other places. What other kind of processes are covered in that book that, people that we haven't talked about on our call?
What I talk about in the book is I talk about how to enhance your personal freedom with things like living overseas, passports, healthcare in better countries, how to keep more of your own money with tax savings, bank accounts, stuff like that, and then how to grow your money, which is what you talk about, investments. So really, it's kind of the primer on everything that I do. Go where you're treated best. Become a global citizen. Again, someone might choose to get a passport and a bank account and just stay living in Wichita. That's cool. You're not going to get the full fleet of benefits, but you're going to have something. At least some guy in Washington can't push one button and all your money's gone. So and I'm not saying that anyone should hide their money. There's legal ways to do this. There's forms to fill out to be compliant, and people should do that. But that's what we cover. It's the whole fleet of how to go where you're treated best. Because my philosophy is the U.S. or wherever you're from is not number one in everything, let alone probably anything. Banks in the U.S., 10 years ago, they did a study, 40th best in the world. Okay. Passport, we ranked at 38th best in the world this year. Taxes, not great. So if you just go and figure out, well, where is it better? Even if that means, what we were talking about earlier, we both have foreign brides, and we found that worked better for us. That, there's been a stigma to that, previously, because people aren't open to, going outside of your comfort zone. But that's an opportunity people should look at. So it's really everything about your life, because this is money, it's your business, but it's also your life. Exactly.
Yeah, I like how you kind of ended it there. Kind of talking about kind of you as an entrepreneur, your business kind of develop. I know you've been working on this for years. Kind of what's some tips that you can offer fellow entrepreneurs that are listening as far as maybe your typical day? What's like a day for you? What are you, early riser? And then what's kind of like your routine?
I'd like to be I can't do it. I'm just set to being up late, and I'm trying not to do the 4 a.m. nights anymore. My routine, what I found is build an in-house team as quickly as you can, build management out, and collaborate with them on a daily basis. We've gone from 3 or 4 people about a year and a half ago to we have 14 plus about 5 permanent freelancers that work with us. We've got about 20 people. And I didn't realize when we first did that, like, oh, we need a decent level of management. So now we put management in place. So I'm basically managing the managers and putting in processes in place for them to manage their teams. What I found does not work for me is having a bunch of freelancers who are just doing stuff and relying on people who, can go to the buffet. I want people who are dedicated, who share my vision, who are totally in. And so that's what my life, I suppose, has looked like. I'm 24/7. But, I think after 15 years of being in business, I'm going to start getting these managers to take stuff over for me. Mm-hmm. I think that's, if what I would say is, where do you want to be 5 years from now with it? What does it look like 5 years from now? Or what does it look like in the next decade of your life? So I'll be 35 in a couple months. Where do I want to be at 40? At 40, I probably don't want to be 24/7, or at least I just want to I call in our company, I say, like, I want to be Tom Ford. I just want to do creative. I want to do research and development. I want to, what's the next passport deal? I don't want to be doing bank compliance, and I'm not, basically, but occasionally someone screws up, I have to step in. So that's what I would ask myself.
Yeah, I like that a lot. This, same kind of process with me. I use a lot of VAs and stuff, and kind of structure the business because, well, I got kids. I don't know if you have kids, but yeah, I had to kind of structure it where I can be upstairs, I can be present, I can take them to baseball games, take them to school, and also get the maximum benefit and process out of the business. So hats off to you there.
I appreciate that.
And then kind of like my final point, like kind of touching on my last question, which I ask all entrepreneurs is, what are you most grateful for?
Well, as of today and seeing my family, I'm grateful that I had the chance to have a family that not only taught me financial literacy, but gave me what I call the permission slip to go where I'm treated best. I can imagine for parents, in the United States, I think people move around, but it's difficult to have a son who's half a world away. It's one of those things where as entrepreneurs, we don't realize our skills. At least for me, I didn't realize, oh, you've got an eye for design, or you've got an eye for this or that. And you can't, it's like, you think everyone else can do it, so you don't give yourself any credit. And then why can't this person do it? Like, what's the problem? Oh, that's not their skill set. It's actually something you have to get a skill set. And in a similar way, I didn't really acknowledge that most people don't know financial literacy. I listened to this guy on the radio in the U.S., Dave Ramsey show from time to time. People call in, they're drowning in debt. They got a big problem. And I learned how to bypass all of that. And so I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful for my parents giving me that opportunity. I mean, people say, Andrew's a trust fund kid. Andrew got $0 in loans, gifts, whatever. But what I got was that great financial literacy. So I was 19, I could start a business, I could be, debt free, and I could know how things work.
Good stuff. I like that a lot, Andrew. How do we get in contact with you?
So nomadcapitalist.com is the website. What I tell people first, if I may be so bold, this is where I would start. Nomad Capitalist, the book. It's $9 or $10, whatever it is. And I've tried to aggregate some experiences into the book, as well as some hard knowledge for someone who may be a beginner. If you know a little bit about this stuff, I think you'll still find some stuff. But what I found is read the book. You'll just say, there's a few things I can do on my own. You'll say, I'm going to dive into this completely, and maybe I'll come to Andrew. Or you'll say, this ain't for me. And so I think that rather than poking around and wasting months doing the internet research, because it's all online for free, read the book. It's kind of the only book I know that really summarizes it. And from there, you'll figure out, whether it's something that you want to do. And every single person I've helped who's really just, vroom, here we go, great results, they started with the book, so they kind of knew what they were getting into.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I really appreciate it, Andrew, because this is a topic that I'm trying to learn more about. But again, start with the book, reach out to you, talk to you, get more information, kind of get that process started. So, Andrew, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy your time over there, and look forward to connect with you again soon.
Well, we'll have to see you one of these days in Slovenia. I think it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, I'll definitely let you know. Yeah, literally was there 2 weeks ago, last week. So, and I look forward to going again. So, absolutely, we look forward to that, and have a great week.
You too, man. Great to do it.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Wealth Through Real Estate Investing podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes or the listening platform of your choice. Also, please check us out at DwaineLClarke.com, as well as find us on Facebook for more useful content and resources.